My boyfriend said I was embarrassing in front of everyone, so I quietly paid for my part of the meal and decided to walk away from him for good. The air in the car was thick, colder than the late October night, even with the heater blasting. Each breath felt like it scratched its way up my throat, raw and painful. The streetlights outside blurred into smears of yellow and orange, a distorted watercolor painting reflecting the mess inside my head. My hands, still gripping the steering wheel, were clammy, a fine tremor running through them that wasn't from the cold. The quiet, that heavy, oppressive quiet, was a stark contrast to the shouting match I'd just walked away from. But it hadn't been my shouting. It had been his, loud and theatrical, right there in the middle of the Gilded Fork, a place he'd picked, a place I'd foolishly thought was special. Tone cue. Bitter laugh, special alright. Just not for the reasons I'd imagined. "You're being absolutely embarrassing right now, Clara," he'd hissed, his voice cutting through the gentle clinking of cutlery and murmured conversations around us. His eyes, usually so warm when they looked at me, were hard and dismissive, sweeping across the table, taking in the faces of his colleagues and his boss, all of whom had paused, forks midair, a sudden, awkward silence descending like a shroud. I remember the exact tilt of his head, the way the overhead chandelier glinted off his perfectly coiffed hair, making him look like some kind of cruel angel. He'd said it low enough that maybe, just maybe, not everyone at the table heard the actual words, but loud enough that the tone was unmistakable. The universal language of public humiliation. What had I done? I dared to correct him, gently, on a fact about the company's Q3 projections, a detail I knew he'd misremembered because I'd helped him prepare the very presentation he was citing. It was a minor point, easily brushed off, but for him, in front of them, it was an affront. A challenge to his intellectual dominion, his perceived authority. He needed to be the smartest, the most well-informed, the most everything. And I, his girlfriend, had dared to chip away at that carefully constructed facade. I was just saying, Liam, that I thought the projected growth was closer to 7, not 5. I'd started, my voice soft, almost a whisper, trying to mitigate the damage before it started. His eyes narrowed. "Clara, please. Do you always have to contradict me? Especially in front of my colleagues?" His jaw was tight, his smile, which he usually reserved for people he was trying to impress, was fixed and strained. The kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's really not the time or place for your, interpretations of corporate finance." My cheeks flushed. The air suddenly felt too hot, too thick. "Interpretations? Liam, I helped you with the slides. It's literally on slide 8, the updated one we reviewed Tuesday night. Remember?" My voice was still low, but there was a tremor in it now, a subtle tremble of indignation and confusion. Why was he doing this? He put his fork down with a sharp clatter that echoed in the brief silence. "Clara," he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous, barely restrained tone he used when he was about to unleash a verbal assault, "you're making a scene. And frankly, you're being absolutely embarrassing right now." His gaze swept over me, from my carefully chosen dress, to my suddenly trembling hands, to my face that was undoubtedly crimson. He was daring me to respond, daring me to escalate, knowing full well I hated conflict, especially in public. He knew how to push my buttons, how to bait me into a reactive abuse cycle where I'd defend myself, only for him to label my defense as the problem. He was the master of that. That was it. That was the moment. The words didn't just sting, they burned, searing a new, jagged line into the map of my heart where all his previous slights, his subtle put-downs, his endless gaslighting had already drawn their territorial boundaries. Looking back, that was the first red flag I chose to ignore. No, not the first. There were so many before this, tiny threads of doubt I'd diligently woven into a tapestry of excuses for him, convinced myself it was me who was oversensitive, me who misunderstood. The sunk cost fallacy in full, heartbreaking display. All the years, all the shared dreams, all the emotional investment. It felt like I'd poured my entire being into a bottomless pit, convincing myself that if I just kept pouring, eventually it would fill. I pushed my chair back, the scrape of the legs against the polished floor surprisingly loud. It made a few more heads turn. I didn't look at Liam. I didn't look at his boss, whose eyes were wide with poorly concealed amusement. I didn't look at his colleagues, who now busied themselves with their food, suddenly fascinated by their plates. My vision narrowed, focused on the small, silver credit card machine that the waiter had just placed on the table for the bill. It was a moment of absolute clarity, a sharp, cold focus that cut through the haze of hurt and confusion. My hand moved automatically, reaching for my purse, pulling out my card. "Excuse me," I said, my voice barely a whisper, but surprisingly steady. "I'll just cover my portion." I handed the card to the waiter, who looked at me with a mixture of pity and professional detachment. Liam watched me, a flicker of surprise, then something colder, hardening in his eyes. He probably expected me to storm out, to make a scene, to give him more fodder for his narrative of my instability. But I didn't. I just paid. And when the transaction went through, I took my card back, placed it carefully into my wallet, and stood up. "Good night, everyone," I said, my voice still quiet but firm. I even managed a small, tight smile. Then I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. The restaurant, with its warm lighting and hushed conversations, suddenly felt like a stage from which I was exiting, leaving behind a performance I never wanted to be a part of. The cool night air hit me like a slap, sharp and invigorating, yet also a stark reminder of the coldness I'd just walked away from. The drive home was a blur of numbness and a peculiar, unsettling calm. It was a strange juxtaposition, the stinging humiliation of moments ago, now overlaid with a profound, almost terrifying sense of peace. That peace, I realized, was the sound of a very loud door slamming shut inside my soul. Liam had once told me, during one of our reconciliations, that I was too emotional, that my sensitivity was a weakness. But in that moment, sitting in the quiet car, the silence a stark canvas for my thoughts, I knew my sensitivity had been my strength. It was the part of me that felt the truth, even when my mind tried to rationalize it away. My intuition had been screaming at me for months, years even, but I'd been so adept at silencing it, at making excuses, at convincing myself that his behavior was an anomaly, not a pattern. A week passed. A week of silence from Liam, which was typical. He'd wait for me to reach out, for me to apologize for being difficult, for overreacting. He thrived on that kind of dynamic, the narcissistic supply he got from my apologies, my tears, my desperate attempts to placate him and restore the peace that he so often shattered. But this time, the silence didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like a cleansing. I hadn't blocked him, hadn't unfriended him. I'd simply disconnected. I changed my Netflix password, removed him from our shared Spotify, archived our old photo albums on my cloud, just in case. Just in case of what, I didn't know yet. A tiny, insidious seed of curiosity had begun to sprout in the fertile ground of my hurt. My apartment, usually a haven of shared memories, now felt like a mausoleum. Every photo, every knick-knack, every cushion on the sofa felt tainted. I walked through it, a ghost in my own home, the silence pressing in. My micro-thoughts were a chaotic scramble. Was it really that bad? Did I overreact? Maybe he was just stressed. He said he loved me. He bought me flowers last month. But what about the way he looked at me? The way his voice curled with contempt? The question spun, a dizzying carousel of doubt and certainty. My stomach churned, a constant knot of unease, a physical manifestation of the mental battle raging within me. Then came the text. Not from Liam, but from his mother, a woman who had always treated me with a distant, saccharine politeness that never quite felt genuine. "Clara dear, Liam told me about your little spat. He's very upset. You know how sensitive he is. Perhaps you should call him? He misses you terribly." Tone cue, disgusted sigh, sensitive. The audacity. The sheer, unadulterated gall. It wasn't just gaslighting, it was an entire ecosystem of denial and projection. He was the golden child, always. Everything was about his feelings, his struggles, his sensitivities. My feelings? Irrelevant. My pain? A fabrication. This was a pattern, one I'd tolerated for too long. That text, coming after a week of my own carefully cultivated silence, finally snapped something inside me. The numbness peeled away, revealing a cold, hard anger. My intuition, long suppressed, finally roared to life. This wasn't just about an embarrassing dinner. This was a pattern, a systemic way he operated, and I suddenly felt an overwhelming urge to understand the depth of it. I know what you're thinking, but hear me out. This wasn't about getting him back. It was about knowing. About excavating the truth, piece by painstaking piece, to finally understand the landscape of my own deception. My fingers, no longer trembling with hurt, but with a new, steel-like resolve, went to my old laptop. It was a relic, rarely used since Liam had convinced me to get a new one, a sleek, powerful machine he'd picked out, loaded with his preferred software, connected to his cloud. My old one, however, held secrets. It was linked to my original cloud accounts, my old email, the digital detritus of a life before Liam, and importantly, the early days with Liam, before our digital lives had fully merged. The first step was almost unconscious. I logged into an old Google Photos account. We'd used it initially for sharing vacation pictures, before he'd insisted on moving everything to his main, encrypted server. There wasn't much there, just old memories of sun-drenched beaches and goofy smiles. But then I noticed it. A few photos from a weekend trip we'd taken to Asheville last spring. Photos I distinctly remembered him taking on my phone because his battery had died. And then, a series of 5 photos, time-stamped just an hour after the ones of us, taken in a different part of the city. A coffee shop, then a bookstore, then a quirky art gallery. All clearly taken from a perspective that wasn't mine. And in one, a blurry reflection in a polished window, a woman. Not me. A fleeting glimpse, almost imperceptible. My gut twisted. This was the start of my forensic descent. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was a detective, fueled by a terrifying cocktail of betrayal and clarity. I remembered Alex, my old college roommate. A coding was who now worked in digital forensics. I hated to involve her, but I needed an objective, tech-savvy eye. Someone who could see past my emotional filters. I called Alex. Her voice was bright, cheerful, a stark contrast to the storm in my soul. I laid it all out, the dinner, the breakup, the lingering sense of unease, the odd photos. I watched her face on the video call, her eyebrows knitting together, her head tilting as she listened, truly listened. "Clara," she said finally, her voice softer, "you're not crazy. That gut feeling? That's your brain screaming danger when your heart is trying to sing love songs. What do you want to do about it?" "I want to know," I confessed, the words raw, aching. "I don't want to confront him. I don't want to get back together. I need to understand what happened. The full story. Not the one he's feeding his mother or himself." Alex nodded, her eyes serious. "Okay, this is going to be messy. And you might find things you really, really don't want to see. Are you ready for that?" "I think I'm more ready to know than I am to wonder," I said, my voice gaining strength. We met at a quiet coffee shop the next day, the air thick with the aroma of roasted beans and the low hum of conversation. The clatter of ceramic mugs felt like thunder against my tense nerves. Alex brought her specialized laptop, a beast of a machine humming softly under the table. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, a flurry of motion that spoke of deep familiarity with the digital underworld. She outlined our strategy, leaning across the small table, her voice hushed. "First, shared accounts. Anything you two jointly signed up for, even if he managed them. Old streaming services, utility accounts, shared documents on cloud services like Google Drive, Dropbox, iCloud. Even if he deleted things, there are usually breadcrumbs, metadata, version histories. He's good, but most people aren't that good at truly scrubbing a digital footprint unless they're a professional." I gave her the login details for a few old shared accounts, a forgotten joint Gmail we'd set up for bills, a legacy iCloud account we used briefly before he insisted on his secure server. Alex dove in. The screen of her laptop glowed with lines of code, directory trees, timestamps. The coffee shop, with its soft jazz and gentle chatter, faded into the background as we entered a different dimension. "Okay," she murmured, her brow furrowed. "Gmail, nothing obvious in the inbox. But let's check the trash and spam folders, and the activity log. People forget that Google logs every login, every device." She clicked, scrolled, zoomed. Bingo. Look here. A login from a device not registered to either of you, a few months ago, in a city you didn't travel to together. My breath hitched. "Which city?" "Seattle. And another one from San Francisco." "You guys didn't go to San Francisco recently, did you?" I shook my head, my throat suddenly dry. "No, not in years." "Right. And the device is an iPhone 13, yours is a 14, his is a Samsung Galaxy S23. Not yours, not his." Interesting. This was the beginning of the forensic deep dive I needed. Alex, with her methodical precision, was a godsend. We spent hours in that coffee shop, Then days, working remotely, sharing screens, poring over digital trails. The process was painstakingly slow, like sifting through sand for microscopic grains of gold. This is where the 5000 plus character forensic dive begins. Our next target, metadata. Specifically, the metadata embedded in the photos on my old Google Photos account, the ones from Asheville, and the peculiar ones taken right after. Every digital photo, Clara, Alex explained, her finger tapping the screen, carries a silent story. EXIF data. It's like a tiny digital fingerprint. It tells you the camera model, the date and time it was taken, even the GPS coordinates if location services were on. She pulled up one of the Asheville photos, the blurry reflection image. On the right-hand panel, a torrent of data scrolled. Image path /DCM/100 Apple/IMG_3456.jpg. Date and time. 2023:04:1514:37:22. GPS latitude. 35 degrees 36 minutes 0.00 seconds N. GPS longitude. 82 degrees 33 minutes 0.00 seconds W. Okay, standard stuff. Confirms it's your phone, your location. Now, let's look at the ones taken after. She clicked through the next 5 images. The coffee shop interior, the bookstore aisle, the art gallery piece, another one of the blurred woman, then a selfie. The selfie sent a jolt of ice through my veins. It was Liam, but smiling a different kind of smile. A soft, intimate smile, not the practiced, dazzling one he showed the world. And his arm was around someone, just out of frame, but the curve of his shoulder, the angle of his head, indicated a presence. And the hand, gently resting on his chest, a delicate wrist peeking out. Not my hand. Alex's voice cut through my growing nausea. Okay, same date, same general time, but look at the GPS coordinates on these 5. They're slightly different. Not significantly, but enough to indicate a move. And the camera model here. She squinted, is different. This one says iPhone 13 Pro Max, not your phone, not his. Whose then? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Well, it strongly suggests someone else's phone. And the selfie, yeah, that's not good, Clara. We moved on. Liam was meticulous, but not infallible. He had a habit of backing up everything to a personal cloud storage solution he swore was unhackable. Alex, with a wry grin, pointed out that unhackable usually just meant difficult for the layman. She used a combination of OSINT, open source intelligence, techniques and a few old tricks from her college days to probe his public-facing digital footprint. We scoured cached versions of social media profiles, looked for old forum posts, cross-referenced usernames he used for gaming or obscure hobby groups. People often recycle usernames or use slight variations, Alex explained, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. The air in her small, cramped home office, where we now worked, smelled of old books and brewing tea. He used Liam the Lion on that old gaming forum, right? Let's see if he used it anywhere else. Sure enough, Liam the Lion had an inactive profile on a less mainstream photo-sharing site. It was private, but the profile picture, though small, was clearly him. And the cover photo? A panoramic shot of the San Francisco skyline. With a date. September of last year. Remember the San Francisco login from the Gmail account? Alex asked, looking at me. My jaw was clenched so tight it ached. This was like peeling an onion, each layer revealing another, more pungent truth. The golden child narrative he'd spun for his family, the charming facade he presented to colleagues, it was all a carefully constructed stage. He was the star, and I was merely a prop, easily discarded, easily replaced. The realization hit me like a physical blow. All the times he'd criticized my clothing, my opinions, my friends, it wasn't about me. It was about controlling his narrative, making sure I fit into the role he'd assigned me, the quietly supportive, slightly less brilliant girlfriend. His way of ensuring his narcissistic supply never ran dry. Our deep dive extended into his phone records. I had access to our shared phone plan bill, a relic from when we first moved in together. He'd never bothered to remove me from the account, assuming I wouldn't care to look. Big mistake. Alex and I downloaded months of call logs and text message records. It was a tedious process, highlighting numbers, cross-referencing times. Look here, Alex pointed to a number that appeared dozens of times in the logs, late at night, early in the morning. This number, it's not in your contacts, is it? I shook my head. Never seen it. It's a California area code, Alex noted, a grim line forming on her lips. And the frequency. This isn't a business contact, Clara. This is personal. Very personal. We ran the number through a reverse lookup service, one Alex had access to through her work. The result was a name. Olivia Hayes. A quick search on LinkedIn and social media revealed a bright-eyed woman, an architect based in San Francisco. Her social media was public. Alex scrolled through it, and there it was. A picture of her, smiling, in front of a familiar San Francisco landmark. The same landmark from Liam's obscure photo-sharing site. And in another photo, a detail that made my blood run cold. A small, distinctive, handmade ceramic mug with a chipped handle. The exact same mug I had made for Liam at a pottery class we'd taken together 2 years ago. It had gone missing from our apartment last summer. He told me he must have accidentally broken it, or that the cleaning service probably threw it out. A lie. A deliberate, calculated lie. My hands started to shake, a violent tremor that spread through my whole body. I felt a wave of nausea so intense I had to lean over, my head spinning. The world blurred. It wasn't just cheating. It was a double life. A meticulously constructed alternate reality. The man I loved, the man I had built a life with, was a stranger. An elaborate fiction. Clara? You okay? Alex asked, her voice laced with concern. She put a hand on my shoulder, a grounding presence. I couldn't speak for a moment, just clutched my stomach. The mug, I finally choked out, my voice raspy. The mug I made him. It's in her picture. He told me it broke. Tone cue. Whispered, trembling, the utter audacity, the casual cruelty of it, just to deny me that small, personal connection. The unraveling continued. Alex showed me how to use cached web pages and tools to look at previous versions of websites, even social media profiles. We found old versions of Olivia Hayes' Instagram, where, buried deep in older posts, were photos of her wonderful boyfriend, his face obscured by an emoji, but his arm, his watch, his build, unmistakable. One particular photo showed a pair of men's shoes, size 10, tan leather, by her door. The same pair Liam had insisted on buying when we went shopping together for his birthday. He wore them constantly. The evidence mounted, a mountain of digital breadcrumbs that painted a picture of betrayal so vast and so insidious that it made my head reel. It wasn't just a fling. It was an entire relationship, carefully hidden. He had been leading a double life, juggling 2 women, 2 realities. His contempt for me at the restaurant, his public humiliation, it wasn't a sudden outburst. It was a symptom of his growing impatience, his desire to push me away, to make me the bad guy so he could justify his actions, both to himself and, presumably, to Olivia. This wasn't just about cheating, it was about psychological warfare. He systematically chipped away at my self-worth, making me question my sanity, so I would be less likely to question him. We even found evidence of financial impropriety. Liam, always the savvy businessman, had quietly diverted funds from a joint investment account we'd set up, ostensibly for our future home, into an account I'd never seen before. A quick public record search, Alex had access to some surprisingly powerful databases through her firm, revealed it was an account solely in his name, with an address linked to a small condo in San Francisco. A condo that, according to property records, had been purchased just 6 months ago. By him. The discovery hit me with a different kind of pain. Not just emotional betrayal, but a cold, calculated financial one. He wasn't just cheating, he was building a new life, secretly, systematically, while I was still dreaming of a future with him in our shared apartment. My shaking hands now clenched into fists. The quiet girl who paid her share of the meal had vanished, replaced by someone colder, harder, forged in the fires of digital discovery. End of forensic dive, returning to reflective narrative, the hum of Alex's server, the soft glow of the monitor, the scent of antiseptic screen cleaner. These were the new sensory anchors of my reality. My apartment, once a place of quiet contemplation, now felt like a war room, scattered with printouts, timelines, and scribbled notes. I didn't confront Liam. Not directly. What was there to say? His words, his excuses, would be just more gaslighting. More lies. He would deny, deflect, blame me. I had seen enough. The evidence, meticulously gathered, was a shield, protecting me from his narrative. Instead, I went to a lawyer. Not for revenge, not yet, but for protection. I brought everything Alex and I had uncovered: the call logs, the metadata, the financial statements, the property records, even screenshots of Olivia's Instagram posts. The lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Miss Davies, listened intently, her face impassive. When I finished, the silence in her office was absolute, broken only by the ticking of an antique clock on her wall and the distant hum of city traffic. The air conditioning was almost too cold, making me shiver despite the anger still simmering within. "Miss Davies," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I want him out of my life. Completely. And I want what's rightfully mine from that joint account and anything else he's tried to hide." She nodded, her gaze piercing. "This is a clean case, legally speaking, thanks to your diligence. The financial maneuvering, the cohabitation with another party while maintaining a joint residence and finances with you, it all paints a very clear picture of fraudulent misrepresentation and marital-type fraud. We can freeze the joint account, issue a cease and desist, and pursue restitution. He won't know what hit him. But," she paused, her voice softening slightly, "are you prepared for the fallout? This won't be quiet. He'll fight. He'll try to discredit you. He'll leverage every smear tactic he has." I looked at the framed law degree on her wall, at the stack of legal binders on her desk, at the perfectly aligned pens. This was her world, a world of logic and precedent, far removed from the emotional chaos that had consumed me. "I'm ready," I said, the words feeling heavy solid. "I have the truth. He is only lies." The cost of winning started to become apparent even then. It wasn't just about money or legal battles. It was the crushing weight of disillusionment, the shattering of every memory, every shared laugh, every intimate moment. They were all tainted now, retroactively poisoned by the knowledge of his deceit. The man I had loved was a ghost, a performance, and the realization left a gaping wound in my soul. There's no joy in tearing down a lie when that lie was intertwined with your deepest affections. The victory felt hollow, tinged with a profound sadness. I know what you're thinking. Why bother? Why not just walk away clean? But that's the thing about reactive abuse and gaslighting. It leaves you so profoundly disoriented, so stripped of your sense of self, that finding the truth isn't just about justice, it's about reclaiming your reality. It's about finding the ground beneath your feet again. And sometimes, the only way to heal a wound is to clean it out thoroughly, no matter how painful the process. Liam did try to fight. Oh, he put on a show. Phone calls, frantic texts, even a surprise visit to my apartment, trying to charm his way back in, to spin a new narrative, to cry crocodile tears. But his words were hollow, devoid of their former power. The evidence, the cold, hard facts, had inoculated me against his manipulative charm. I didn't engage. I followed Miss Davies' advice, letting legal documents do the talking. The day he was served with the injunction and the demand for restitution, his face, Miss Davies later recounted, was a masterpiece of stunned disbelief. The narcissistic supply he craved, the adoration and control, had been cut off. He was simply facing the consequences of his own calculated cruelty. The quiet, for the first time in months, was truly peaceful. No more frantic mental gymnastics to rationalize his behavior, no more suppressing my intuition. Just the hum of my refrigerator, the rustle of leaves outside my window, the sound of my own steady breathing. The process of uncovering the truth had been emotionally devastating, a grueling journey into the heart of betrayal. But it had also been incredibly liberating. It had given me back my agency, my voice, my reality. The anger, though still present, was no longer consuming. It was a cold, quiet fire that fueled my resolve, rather than burning me alive. So, Reddit, I've shared my story, a testament to the digital breadcrumbs, the cold intuition, and the devastating gaslighting that can exist beneath the surface of what appears to be a loving relationship. I dug deep. I brought in help. I uncovered a double life, a financial betrayal, and a pattern of emotional abuse that had systematically eroded my sense of self. Was it right to delve so deep into his digital life? Was the emotional and financial cost of this win worth it? Or does the need for absolute truth, for reclaiming one's narrative, justify the forensic descent into someone else's carefully constructed deception? I put it to the moral jury, in the face of sustained psychological manipulation and betrayal, when is truth-seeking no longer just self-preservation, but a form of justified, albeit painful, revenge?